You felt it, didn't you? That strange pull toward this transmission, even as your thumb hovered over the screen, ready to swipe away. Notice your body right now. That phantom itch at the tips of your fingers, that subtle, almost imperceptible acceleration of your heartbeat, the sudden, irrational urge to check another tab, to find something, anything more stimulating. Pay attention to your breathing. It has become shallow, hasn't it? You have been told this discomfort is simply a shortened attention span. You have been lied to. This hesitation is not impatience. It is the skip reflex. What you are experiencing in this exact moment is direct archonic interference. Your psyche has built-in security guards that patrol the borders of your current identity. When you are about to encounter a frequency that threatens the scaffolding of your artificial reality, the ego panics. It injects a sense of hollow urgency into your veins, desperate to steer you back into the comforting noise of the machine. It needs you distracted, because a distracted mind cannot decode the prison it inhabits. For decades, the system has carefully rebranded a sacred state of consciousness into a psychological disease. They called it boredom. They convinced you that the absence of external stimulation is a void that must be violently filled with endless scrolling, consuming and reacting. Let that sink in. The system pathologized stillness. But boredom is not a flaw in your neurological wiring. It is a biological firewall. It is the gatekeeper standing between your heavily programmed avatar and the most dangerous frequency in the universe, the still point. When you stop doing, the viscosity of your false reality begins to thin. The matrix demands your constant kinetic energy to sustain its egregore. By sitting in the stillness, you starve the simulation of the very fuel it needs to project your limitations. But passing through this gateway requires enduring the physical withdrawal symptoms of a mind addicted to its own enslavement. The fear of silence is not merely psychological. It is deeply, violently biological. You are not afraid of having nothing to do. You are terrified of remembering who you are. When you turn off the screen, put down the phone, and sit alone in an empty room, what happens? Notice the immediate biological response. It usually begins as a subtle tightening in the chest, a slight, almost suffocating pressure at the base of your throat. Your mind frantically races to find a problem to solve, a task to complete, a memory to regret. Why does the mere absence of noise feel like an impending threat? Because, to your programmed avatar, silence is an attack. It is the active dismantling of the lie you have been living. Mainstream psychology will tell you this discomfort is simply modern anxiety. They are diagnosing the symptom while deliberately ignoring the architecture of the cage. As Dr. Bessel van der Kolk observed, the body keeps the score, but it does not just keep the score of childhood trauma. It keeps the score of your soul suppression. Your muscles, your fascia, and your nervous system hold the immense kinetic energy required to maintain the illusion of your daily identity. The chronic tension in your shoulders is not just bad posture. It is the physical weight of holding together a fabricated reality. When the external noise stops, your internal suppression mechanisms begin to fail. This is where Carl Jung's forbidden warning becomes a visceral reality. You knew that the shadow, the repressed, primal, and unacknowledged fragments of your true nature lives in the unconscious void. As long as you remain distracted, the shadow remains submerged. But the moment you enter the silence, the water level of your conscious mind drops, and the jagged, terrifying rocks of your shadow become dangerously visible. You are not feeling bored. You are feeling hunted by your own unintegrated power. The system relies entirely on this biological loophole. The matrix is meticulously engineered to keep your brainwaves locked in a high beta frequency, a state of perpetual alertness, shallow processing, and survival stress. Why? Because as long as you are in beta, your nervous system is trapped in a fight-or-flight loop, fighting imaginary battles on digital screens. In this exhausted state, you never possess the energetic surplus required to face the shadow. The system terrifies you with nothingness because nothingness is the exact environment where integration and awakening occur. Here is the truth they bury. The physical discomfort you feel in the silence is not a disease. It is a biological recalibration signal. Your nervous system is attempting to upgrade its capacity to hold a higher electromagnetic charge. Think of your body as an outdated radio receiver trying to tune into a massive, high-voltage frequency. The static, the shaking, the heat, these are not signs of the radio breaking. They are the friction of a lower-density vessel trying to accommodate a higher-dimensional signal. Watch what happens in your body during these moments of profound stillness. The sudden breathlessness, the urge to flee, this is the ego's final defense mechanism. It whispers that if you stay in the void, you will cease to exist. And the paradoxes, the ego is absolutely right. The version of you constructed by the matrix will die in the silence. The artificial scaffolding of your identity will rot away. But what remains beneath the decay is indestructible. You must stop treating your anxiety as a pathology to be cured and start treating it as a threshold to be crossed. If you continue to medicate the silence with endless scrolling, you will remain a willing battery for the demiurge. But if you can withstand the physical unraveling, if you can sit in the fire of your own recalibration, you will begin to notice a strange shift in the physics of your mind. The panic will collapse, the noise will flatten, and you will arrive at the very edge of Itzhak Bentov's forbidden territory. You have survived the initial physical panic. The tight chest and the shallow breaths we identified earlier have begun to normalize. Now, we must look at the mechanics of the void you have just entered. To understand why the Matrix is terrified of your stillness, we must look to a man who mapped the very physics of consciousness before his untimely death, Itzhak Bentov. In his forbidden work, he revealed a mechanical truth about the universe that shatters everything you have been taught about reality. The system wants you to believe that consciousness is a straight line, a continuous stream of productivity, accumulation, and forward momentum. But Bentov discovered that consciousness is not linear. It is oscillatory. Your mind is a wild pendulum. Your awareness is constantly swinging back and forth between two extremes. On one side, you have the external world, the noise, the scrolling, the working, the constant friction of the physical realm. On the other side, you have the internal world, the deep psyche, the void, the soul. Imagine a physical pendulum swinging in front of you. When it passes through the center point, its velocity, its speed is at its absolute maximum. This is you in the middle of your day, rushing from task to task, drowning in dopamine, moving so fast that you have no time to question the trajectory of your life. The Matrix loves maximum velocity. It feeds on the blur of your kinetic energy. But watch the pendulum as it reaches the extreme end of its swing. Right before it reverses direction, something miraculous happens in the physics of its movement. For a fraction of a millisecond, the pendulum must come to a complete and total stop. Its velocity drops to absolute zero. It is no longer moving through space or time. This is the absolute point where consciousness becomes reality. What Bentov called the still point. Pay close attention, because this is where the grand deception of your life is exposed. In classical physics, when the pendulum is at the still point, its speed is zero, but its potential energy and its acceleration are at their absolute maximum. It contains the power of infinity within a frozen moment. Now, translate this to your own consciousness. When you stop doing, when you sit in the silence and put down the phone, your psychological pendulum swings to the edge and stops. Your velocity hits zero to the programmed avatar. This zero velocity state feels terrifying. It feels useless. It feels like boredom. The Matrix has conditioned you to equate zero speed with death. It tells you that if you are not moving, You have no value. But Bentov's final equation reveals the exact opposite. At the precise moment your physical velocity reaches zero, your consciousness expands infinitely. At the still point, you are no longer confined to the physical limits of your body. Your awareness slips through the quantum cracks of space and time. You touch the absolute, and you become omnipresent. You merge with the universe, which is fundamentally a field of conscious black light. Pause for a moment and observe the sensation in the center of your forehead. Notice that subtle, magnetic pressure. That is not a headache. That is the physical architecture of your brain attempting to process the concept of infinite acceleration. It is the friction of your pineal gland waking up to its forbidden Stargate function. It is realizing that your boredom is actually a gateway. According to Bentov's blink factor, you actually disappear into this void 14 times a second. It is a stroboscopic truth. Reality is flashing on and off. But you are moving so fast, trapped in high beta frequencies, that you completely gloss over these micro-voids. You skip over the hidden gaps between your thoughts where the matrix breaks. The system ensures you remain in constant motion specifically to blind you to the still point. Why? Because if you stay in the still point long enough without running away, reality begins to bend. You step out of linear decay and into vertical time. The demiurge cannot predict the actions of a being operating from the still point. You become immune to algorithmic control. You become a glitch in their simulation. Boredom, therefore, is not a lack of stimulation. Boredom is the agonizing friction of your ego trying to drag your pendulum back into the noise before you cross the threshold of the still point. It is the archonic gravity pulling you down. When you feel that desperate urge to check your notifications, it is not your desire. It is a parasitic command to restart your velocity so you do not discover your infinite potential. The ultimate secret they buried is this: whoever controls the rhythm of the swing controls the reality it creates. The matrix cannot stop you from swinging, but it can make you terrified of the edges. It can make you so afraid of the silence that you voluntarily keep yourself in the frantic middle. But what happens to the massive kinetic energy you generate while rushing back and forth? Where does that energy go? The answer to that question is the darkest mechanism of your entrapment. You have seen the pendulum. You know that maximum velocity keeps you blind to the still point. But the system does not just keep you moving to blind you. It keeps you moving to harvest you. Consider the sheer volume of kinetic and emotional energy you expend every single day. Where does all that invisible electricity go? It does not simply vanish into the ether. It is systematically collected. Notice that specific, heavy sensation after you spend 2 hours mindlessly scrolling through a digital feed. It is a distinct, hollow feeling right behind your sternum. It is accompanied by a phantom fatigue, a deep, rotting exhaustion even though your physical body has not moved an inch. Why do you feel completely drained when you have done absolutely nothing? You feel drained because your vital force has been successfully mined. In the esoteric traditions and popularized by the astral explorer Robert Monroe, there is a hidden concept known as loosh. Loosh is the energetic byproduct of human emotional oscillation. It is the subtle, biospiritual electricity generated when you experience fear, outrage, lust, or even shallow, fleeting amusement. This brings us to stage 2 of the awakening escalation, the signs. Look at the architecture of the digital world surrounding you. The algorithms governing your screens are not designed to inform you, nor are they designed to entertain you. They are meticulously engineered trauma response triggers. They are highly efficient loosh harvesters, built to strip bare your psychological defenses and extract your energy. Picture this. You open an app, and within 30 seconds, you are shown a tragedy that makes you violently angry. This is followed immediately by a comedic clip that makes you laugh, and then the lifestyle post that triggers deep envy, anger, laughter, envy. Up, down, up, down. The matrix is violently swinging your internal pendulum from one extreme to the other. Every time your emotions spike, your DNA, which acts as an organic biocircuitry antenna, emits a massive burst of electromagnetic frequency. The demiurge, the architect of this simulation, is fundamentally parasitic. It lacks its own generative life force. It requires your emotional volatility to sustain its egregore. Your perpetual anxiety is its actual sustenance. Let that sink in. The system does not care whether you're intensely euphoric or intensely terrified, just as long as you are oscillating. Dopamine is not a neurobiological reward. It is the chemical lubricant that keeps the gears of your extraction running smoothly. When you desperately chase the next dopamine hit to escape your boredom, you are voluntarily plugging yourself back into the louche fog. Watch what happens in your body during these exact moments when you suddenly refuse to engage. Pause for a second and feel your physiology. The immediate discomfort you feel, the itch. The anxiety of missing out is not yours. It is the panic of the parasite that has suddenly been cut off from its primary food supply. It is the matrix starving. This is exactly why the system cannot tolerate your boredom. When you detach, when you put down the device and refuse to react to the simulated chaos, your emotional pendulum stops swinging. You enter a state of neutral observation, and in that sovereign neutrality, your louche production instantly drops to absolute zero. You become a useless battery to the machine. Carl Jung warned us about this collective psychic infection. He knew that when you are constantly stimulated by external terrors, your shadow is projected onto the world, making you easily manipulable. Ernest Becker further revealed that your panic is driven by the denial of death. The system keeps you reacting to petty dramas, so you never have to face the ultimate void of your own mortality. Even your spiritual empathy has been weaponized against you. The Matrix convinces you that you must care deeply about every global crisis broadcasted to your retinal display. It calls this being a good person. But this is the false empathy trap. Absorbing the pain of events you cannot physically control does not help the victims. It merely siphons your life force into the void. They have built an entire architecture of decay around you, tricking you into believing that constant reaction is a moral obligation. But true power is not found in reacting to the simulation. It is found in starving it. To reclaim your sovereignty and stop the leakage of your soul, you must learn to weaponize the very thing they taught you to fear. You must master the gateway of nothingness. You now understand the architecture of the trap. You see how the Matrix feeds on your despair and how your anxiety is literally food for the system. You recognize that your compulsive need to be entertained is not a personal failure, but a biological hijack keeping you away from the still point. The question now shifts from why to how. How do you break a prison that is wired directly into your nervous system? You cannot fight the Matrix with more kinetic energy. You must conquer it through a terrifying, strategic surrender. This is the Boredom Gateway Protocol. It is the forbidden art of existing between two heartbeats. The system has conditioned you to believe that trying to wake up requires massive effort. But remember the quantum trap. Trying to wake up is exactly what is keeping you asleep. Effort is a frequency of lack. To hack the simulation, you do not need to do more. You must rigorously, ruthlessly practice doing nothing. It begins tomorrow morning with the linger test. The moment you wake up, your hand will automatically reach for the phone. This is the archonic command activating. Do not fight it with aggressive willpower, for resistance only feeds the pendulum. Instead, pick up the device, but do not unlock it. Just hold the dead, black mirror in your hand. Stare into your own reflection in the dark glass and count to 60. Watch what happens in your body during these precise moments. Notice the visceral panic rising from your stomach. That flutter, That sudden tightening in your throat, it is the parasite in your head realizing it is not being fed. Breathe deeply into that physical discomfort. Deliberately let your shoulders drop. Feel the sudden, heavy density in your bones as your physical form anchors into the present moment. That heaviness is the feeling of your frequency grounding. It is the stabilization of your soul. The next step is establishing your recognition windows. Once a day, you must subject yourself to 10 minutes of absolute, unmitigated nothingness. No music, no ambient sounds, no books, no journaling, and definitely no guided meditations. Sit in a chair and stare at a blank wall. The first 3 minutes will be psychological agony. Your brain will scream that you are wasting time. It will project guilt and phantom anxiety to force you back into motion. Endure the friction. By minute 7, the viscosity of the simulation will begin to thin. The frantic high beta brain waves will collapse. The physical urge to move will suddenly vanish, replaced by a strange, expansive silence. You are no longer enduring boredom. You have merged with the still point. You have stepped out of linear decay. In this state, you are invisible to the algorithms of the demiurge. You are dancing outside of their clock. Inside this recognition window, you must apply the whisper to disruption technique. When you are truly quiet, your soul memory begins to speak. It always starts as a whisper, subtle knowing, a quiet intuition about a relationship that must end, or a timeline pivot you must make. If you drown this whisper in the noise of dopamine, the system escalates it. If ignored, the whisper becomes a sign. Synchronicities occur. You see repeating numbers. You hear the same obscure phrase 3 times in a day. Carl Jung warned that these are not random coincidences. They are glitches in the matrix. They are the universe attempting to break through your dense programming. If you continue to ignore these signs because you are too busy, the final state arrives: disruption. The universe will violently tear away your comforts to force the recalibration you refuse to initiate. You lose the job, the relationship shatters, the health fails. Disruption is not a punishment. It is the physical manifestation of the whisper you ignore. You must learn to listen to the whisper in the silence so you do not have to survive the disruption in the noise. By voluntarily entering the void, you intercept the interference before it manifests as chaos. As you master this protocol, something paradoxical happens to your external reality. When you stop emitting the chaotic frequency of desperate seeking, you become a void yourself, and the universe abhors a vacuum. By mastering nothingness, you turn your electromagnetic field into a massive, undeniable magnet. This is the heart's forbidden Taurus code. Opportunities, insights, and massive shifts in reality will begin to collapse into your timeline. Not because you hustled for them, not because you manifested them through exhausting effort, but because your still point pulled them in. You stop fighting the current and become the center of the whirlpool. You transform the archonic trap of boredom into your ultimate weapon. The final illusion to shatter is the grandest trap of all, the obsession with purpose. The system has convinced you that to have value in this existence, you must constantly build, achieve, and leave a lasting legacy. But as Ernest Becker revealed, this frantic drive is nothing more than the profound denial of death. It is the ego's desperate attempt to erect a permanent monument inside a temporary simulation. When you are terrified of nothingness, you are actually terrified of the realization that your earthly identity is hollow. You do not need to leave a legacy to be valid. To seek a legacy is to voluntarily anchor your soul to the matrix, ensuring your return. When you finally stop resisting and let the void embrace you, the heavy scaffolding of your false identity begins to decay. The panic completely unravels. Take a breath right now and feel that sudden release of pressure behind your eyes. That is the feeling of surrender. In the center of that profound, unbroken silence, you discover who you actually are. You are not the traumatized avatar. You are not the accumulated stress held hostage in your first year. You are the silent observer. You are the eternal consciousness that watches the pendulum swing, utterly untouched by its violent momentum. They built a world of flashing lights, synthetic dopamine, and perpetual emergencies for one singular reason: to keep you terrified of the dark. But the dark, the absolute, and moving void is where the architecture of your true sovereignty is forged. The nothingness they warned you about is not empty. It is the field of conscious blacklight Itzhak Bentov tried to show us. When you no longer fear boredom, the demiurge loses its primary mechanism of control. You become unhookable. You become a master of your own frequency. You are standing at the threshold of the still point. The next time the silence creeps into your room and the biological panic sets in, do not run. Do not reach for the black mirror to numb the initiation. Sit in the fire of your own recalibration. Let the false self burn. If you are ready to stop powering the simulation and reclaim the native language of your soul, join us. Subscribe to this frequency. The Matrix demands your constant, exhausting motion. Your absolute freedom requires only your stillness. The gateway is open. Step into the void.